We've been trying to prove there's a brown dwarf in the solar system, that it is the famed and infamous Planet X. A lot of people jump on that bandwagon when Caltech came forth with Planet 9. It seemed like they all came at the same time, promoted the same theories. This instrument I used to use a lot, and I want to show you the changes that we went through because we told you this was going to happen. Used to be one of my favorite instruments because it gave you a dark count, which measures helium-3, helium-4. Some of those satellites were measuring protons and not helium-3 and helium-4. Helium-3, helium-4 always came one way. It came one way from the sun and only the sun. And usually when there was a coronal hole stream. Now, the coronal holes are openings in the surface plasma that are created by tugging. The tugging can be from more than one source, because you notice during certain alignments, we get bigger, larger equatorial coronal holes. But this is what I want to show you. That gold line down there, 0.4, about 0.5 watts per meter to the -2. Look what it is today. They've got everything flattened out. And what troubles me the most is that, the flattened out black line is still up above what the warning line was 41. So at 48, it's still above the warning line, a flat line that's above the warning line. So what dark particles are they counting? But the gold line, the 30 nanometer radiation in the bottom section, is right up there above 3. Okay, now that's a huge increase. That's like you go from 0.5 to 3. That's more like a 6-fold increase, 600% increase in that radiation. I don't think we would be able to survive that. I think it would be very uncomfortable for that to be coming down. 30 nanometer radiation is about as extreme of ultraviolet as you can get. Some people call them X-rays. So that would account for headaches. But generally, the 0.1 nanometer radiation is absorbed by helium, and when it absorbs enough of that, electrons fly off, giving off even other kinds of radiation. But our radiation signature on the sun has gone dark. This is 0.1 nanometers. So it must be a lot of helium around the sun. And then Mauna Loa Observatory has gone through a lot of heartache, and their heartache is felt by me. They're missing 3 astronomers that were really well respected. All died unnatural deaths. But the observatory has made changes in their homepage to accommodate the stuff that we've been showing you. And basically, they put out a notice that's new. And let me see if I can find it and pull it up here. A warning notice. And I'd like to read it to you real quick. It says, warning, the coronal intensity on the COMP images is incorrect. Incorrect. You had incorrect scientific instruments. Well, I mean, there's other instruments that measure the same thing. And, color graphs aren't that accurate anyways. But what did we pay you for? So you can see how scientists end up having to swallow a lot of mud. in order to continue what they do. The coronal brightness appears to be increasing with time since the start of the missions in 2011. This has been traced to a degradation in the instrument diffuser used for flat fielding. A correction has been devised and now applied to present and future data. Okay, now, if you believe that, then you would say that the degradation started the minute they started the mission in 2011, the minute they put up the telescope. Okay, the minute the diffuser was put up, it started degrading and allowing greater brightness. But I want to remind you that since 2011, we've seen a lot of brightness. Remember, there has to be more brightness. 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2014 were solar maximum. How could you not have more brightness? But no, it was due to the diffuser, which is a curious statement because the diffuser is very expensive. It's very, not a whole lot of places use this on a telescope. They use occulting discs. Excuse me. I have an occulting disc caught in my throat. But a diffuser is used by satellites to detect exoplanets that traverse in front of other suns, and thereby making the sun dimmer, but not the entire frame dimmer. So they use a diffuser so you can see objects that are not washed out in front of the sun. But wait a minute, Mauna Loa isn't looking for objects in front of the sun. Oh, brother. And the diffuser degrading, if you look at what diffusers are, you're like, wow, how does that degrade? Well, they degrade with exposure to ultraviolet light. Excuse me. So if you were having problems with your diffuser, I think that kind of evidence that there's more ultraviolet coming through than you ever anticipated. And their white light image, this one goes back to 2013. I don't even know if you could go back to 2013, but I'm encouraging you to go look for May 14th, 2013, and see if this image is still even there. This is the chronometer from Mauna Loa, the MK4, and when you look at what this instrument looks like today, you would see that it looks brighter. Excuse me. Brighter. And they do use discs on the Mauna Loa Observatory to there's actually a disc outside that occulting disc that kind of blurs things on the inner corona. And when you go to Mauna Loa, you see, wait a minute, oh, if we're looking for brown dwarfs, signs of brown dwarf, that their predominant cosmic ray is helium, then the helium intensity instrument should be of incredible value to you and me. However, when you click on that Get Data button, you don't get helium data. When you click on that movie, you get just a single day or abbreviated day, 4/6/2018. That's the only helium data you're getting off this website, even though they even have another helium instrument that's not even up and running. They pulled that one down. It's just a spectroscopy. So I don't know why you can't do spectroscopy of helium anymore. You do it for everything else, white light. And so the helium below is simply a sample movie to show you a solar flare. So the only helium data really on Mauna Loa Observatory is a single movie taken on 4/6 spectrograph video of the inner corona. When you click on where it said helium and the COMP instrument, the one that's brightening since 2011, you can see there's no helium there. Hello. Our sun is supposed to be fusing protons into helium. Why aren't you measuring helium? Why nobody wants you to know what the helium count is? And that's because there's a brown dwarf inside our solar system. Pretty amazing stuff. Now, when people talk about seeing orbs in the sky And we always try to tell you that we just think that creates a little complacency when you think that a giant planet could be next to your sun and not affect you. We've been documenting the effects of Jupiter and this brown dwarf for 4 or 5 years now. The effects of interplanetary alignments. We've made at least 150 to 200 earthquake predictions, at least. Okay, and every single, I still can't believe it, every single one was right. So we know what Jupiter does to earthquakes. So if there was another Jupiter next to the sun, the Earth would be bouncing, basically, in the sky. So, but geomagnetic storms are dangerous, and the cosmic rays are dangerous, and the radiation coming from the particle interaction is dangerous. And when you look at, you're like, well, what's the difference between a geomagnetic storm and a cosmic ray and solar flares? Solar flares give out rays and create geomagnetic storms. So why do you have 3 different categories? And we'll go through this. The actual change in the direction and speed of an electron releases gamma radiation and X-rays. But the particles coming through and coming in and being drawn in, also protons are attracted to a negative field. They will create heart fluctuations, heart attacks, strokes, acute coronary syndrome, blood pressure increase, seizures, migraines, anxiety, stress, emotional instability, cognitive stuff. It's a demutation, suicide risk, mental disorder, flare-up, radiation risk. The alert is for diabetic patients and those with metabolic disorders. Why? Because it can drop your blood sugar or raise your blood sugar, depending how much exposure you're getting. Airline passengers, be careful. Cosmic ray risk. Okay, cosmic rays cause geomagnetic storms, but the actual cosmic ray themselves, the actual particles themselves, and that would be neutrons and protons and electrons. Acute myocardial infarction, cerebral stroke, terminal arrhythmias, anxiety, stress, emotional instability, cognitive demutation, uptick in traffic accidents and work injuries. It's got to be from the swelling in the brain. Suicide risk, mental disorder flare-up, radiation risk. An enhanced alert for those with ventricular dysfunction and ischemic cardiomyopathy. That means anybody with a damaged heart. Airline passenger, high risk. Solar flares, that's the actual radiation coming off the sun at the moment the sun flares. It's not the cosmic rays nor the geomagnetic storms. It's the actual radiation created at the time of a flare. Okay? And we think that the blinking and the flashing in the sun is exactly that. It's particles colliding. And so without solar flares, then what's creating the radiation? Particle collision. Flare-ups in migraines, digestive disorders, skin conditions, including those related to STDs like herpes. And so that has to deal with the extreme ultraviolet and X-rays. The X-rays hurt your digestive tract. Anybody getting radiation treatment knows this because they penetrate deeper. And that's a huge surface area in your abdomen that's usually exposed to solar flares when you're outside. Visual impairment and slowed reaction time. That has to be brain inflammation that's deeper. Emotional instability, radiation risks. So, I mean, the categories are almost identical. So that's pretty serious stuff if we're having a lot of geomagnetic storms, which we have been. Last year especially, and when we go through the focusing cone. And when we have cosmic rays that are even related to coronal hole streams or coronal mass ejections, then we got issues. And therefore, with other content that's being put out there, I'm scared that you guys will get complacent and think that those orbs are actually real planets. You assume that we could survive those kind of things, then what do you need to be prepared about?